All right. I think we are ready. Let's kickstart this off
All right,
with
so
a
yeah,
question.
let's kick this start off. And I think this is actually I saw one coming in, and I think this is an important one because everybody will have this question, from time to time. How do I finance my first real estate deal?
Yeah, when I first got started, I was like, I don't even have any money. So I had credit, but I didn't have any money and so forth. But obviously, let's just call out the big one. I mean, going to your local bank, right? I mean, that's one way. I wouldn't say it's the easiest way, especially if you haven't been in business. You'd have to put it in your personal name, which, obviously people advise against. You want to put it in a company name, but that's where it was important. But obviously, going to a bank, hard money has been around for years. It's going to be a short term loan. There's going to be points, it's going to be interest. But at the end of the day, people are I remember in a seminar one time, Bo, somebody's like, I'm not paying 15% interest. And I'm like, well, don't do the deal.
Yeah, really.
You could make $0 by not doing the deal, So
And if you don't have any money, where are you going to get it from, right?
that's always the key. And I think it happens more as you get more experienced. But if I said, hey, how do you purchase your first property? That financing piece to it. Why not just change the strategy and do seller financing, where I could get the seller to finance my very first property that's going to be in my name? It's going to be deeded to me. And instead of me making the payments to, a Wells Fargo, I'm making the payments directly to the seller. I didn't even understand that strategy the first year and a half. Like, I didn't even know what that was. And then as we started doing that, I mean, that's how you can acquire properties fairly quickly
Hmm.
without having to put a huge down payment down, and on top of that, you can probably put repairs into the property. So that strategy in itself, I would highly recommend study that strategy, unless you just have millions of dollars sitting in the bank, right? But the question is the financing part. You know, I'm not in business, or I just started my business. So my business hasn't been in business. No one's going to give the business a loan, right? So there's always going to be that personal guarantee anyway. So you have to have good credit. And that's where, again, I go back to seller financing is really so popular right now, super popular, especially in a buyer's market. That is the one strategy that you have to focus on, because that's going to be one of the easiest ways to finance your first property. And I think as you build that, as you start to build experience, build an inventory, I think that's where we get into private money. And private money is just finding other investors or other people that want to invest their money. I couldn't tell you, there's so many people out there that they have money, but they don't want to work the game. Like, that's not their game, real estate, but they know real estate is where to invest in. So they just loan millions of dollars and you go do the work. Now, of course, they get a return on that. And there's so many different ways that you can structure
Yep.
how that's going to be repaid. When my first deal with private money, it was a 50-50 equity split. So what happened is, I built a relationship with other people and they would give me the money. And then I would sell the property, we'd fix it up, sell the property. We would manage the contractors, all the rehab stuff, and getting it sold. And then we would split the proceeds at the end. And then as you even get more experienced, you kind of cater that a little more favorable towards you, to where, maybe I can do simple interest. Hey, give me a $500,000 and I'll pay you 10% interest on that. So there's a lot of different ways to structure that. There's not, I would say, a perfect way, but that was one of the things that, I remember speaking with Bobby about this. And that's why I wanted Bobby to come on, is to talk about how he did it, because this is how is he doing it from, wholesaling deals and now getting into buying numerous properties and using private money. So
Everything Chris said is just on point. When I started out, I left my W-2 job. I couldn't go to a local bank. So I had to try to figure it out if I wanted to get into real estate investing. So yeah, man, everything you just spoke of, the credibility side of real estate investing is another thing that I found is super valuable, is knowing how to analyze a deal and be able to talk the language to people that have money as far as the private lending side. And when you build those relationships, that's where the trust factor comes in, and they kind of say, okay, this guy knows his stuff, he knows what he's doing. So you got to be able to analyze the deal, know how to find the right deal, and then be able to promote that deal to someone who might have some capital sitting around. And
That,
so, yeah, we
let me
have,
just mention one thing there, Bobby. Actually, you said something really big. I wasn't even thinking about it till you just said it. Was, and I know it's hard when you first get started, but as you build those relationships, that credibility is huge,
yeah,
huge. Also, it's not even something that's really taught
yeah,
out there. How do you build the credibility from a standpoint of a real estate investor? So when you speak with people, they buy you,
yeah,
right? So they're buying into you. And we were told this years ago, no one's, you're never going to be able to sell anything until they buy into you first, right? So that's part of the process there. But keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
no,
that's a
no.
huge part.
Yeah, I mean, so when you start in real estate, you try to build a dream team of people like attorneys and insurance agents and maybe some contractors that maybe a home inspector. Rely on these professionals to kind of help you find those deals and recognize the deal. Because if somebody, let's say you didn't have any deals and you're talking to a potential lender, and that could be at a local re-up meetup type event where you go to the local area and you meet other investors in the room and they just want to know who you are and what you're doing. The cool part is that by having, say, an attorney who closes 100 deals a month, they can then be told, hey, I have my attorney, he's on our team, he closes over 100 deals a month. My inspectors, they do a top-notch job and they look at every aspect of the property and they give me a 7-page report on this property. So even though you personally haven't done an inspection or know how to inspect it, you have a person that is a professional on your dream team that you're able to promote. So a lot of people say, well, you don't have any experience, so how do you know what the appraisal is? Okay, well, I have a home inspector, I have an appraiser, I have people on my team that have many, many years of knowledge in that particular aspect to help me in that process. Now, obviously in REI Pro, you're able to run the analysis and run your comps, but we now have real estate agents that are on our team that actually run comps as well. So when we're looking at a deal, we have them back that up. Sometimes we even order the appraisal if we really want to back it up with an actual appraisal to send to our lenders. And one of the things that I've done recently to secure more private capital is I create what we call a lead sheet, which has all those numbers on it. It shows the investor what the potential ARV is, what the repairs are. I might even show them the scope of work, and it shows them all that information so that they can make that decision on whether it's a good investment or a bad investment. But the number one thing it does is it builds credibility and your ability to recognize where that deal is and what, everybody's in for a win-win situation. So you got to learn how to educate people and teach them all about your ventures with real estate. You got to maybe even talk about how, particular seller finance arrangements work. And if you get a deal under a seller finance contract, you might need a down payment, or you need closing costs, or maybe you need some rehab money. So you got to know that game, and that's just part of the process. But I typically like to lead with the deal. You say you find the deal, the money will follow typically. I went on a mission last September and started scaling my company, and I started finding really great opportunities and deals. And I actually closed on $3.5 million worth of single families from September to February, all because of private money. And so once I found a deal, I was able to present that to my lenders, the people that I've been talking to, the people I've been networking with, and the money was there.
Well,
Yeah,
they're like Chris said, a lot of them they're not in the business of real estate per se, but
Yeah.
they know that that is generally a secure avenue where the stock market, has just been crazy up and down and stuff. And so they're just trying to get a good return for themselves as well. And you're providing that pathway for them. So
Yeah, and we have a connection with a specialized trust company where if somebody wanted to move their money from a 401 to a self-directed IRA, they can then put that into real estate. And so then we send a check straight to their 401 or to their trust. So it's really cool because they're not going to get taxed on it by moving that transfer over, and they're basically going to be able to make the money on it better than a return on regular 401.
Let me ask you this, Bobby, right? So you've got this set up now, but like how does that even start? You talked about you have your real estate attorney, you have a realtor, you have your home inspector. Like how do you even start to build those types of relationships? Because to me, if I were just getting started, that would be my first question. Like, how do you start to build that? What are some things that you did?
So the very first thing I did when I started knowing I needed to find the right attorney was I talked to local real estate investors at a local meetup that I went to. And I was literally going out there on Facebook and searching for any kind of real estate group that was in my specific area. And they always publicize like a meetup or a one-on-one type thing. And we would end up going there and I would ask them, like, hey, who do you recommend for closing attorneys? And I started setting up an appointment face to face with different closing attorneys. And it was about the third attorney I met with. And I kind of jived really well with him. And I understood that he was growing. They started a fairly new practice, but they were closing over 150 deals a month. And I told him what I was into. And I told him how I wanted to get into real estate investing. I didn't have a contract, but REI Pro had a contract. So what did I do? I printed it out. I sent it to the attorney. He vetted the contract. Of course, they want to make it super protective and super padded, but they said this contract works really well. And that's the same contract that we use today. The only thing we've ever added was general warranty deed in the contract. So, just knowing that I sent it to an attorney and they were able to guide me through that process, I now know that's one member of my dream team. When it came to the insurance agent, the same thing. I was at a local group. I started asking other investors in the room, hey, who do you recommend for an insurance company or an insurance agent? And it's just word of mouth. You have to connect with people. If you don't get out there and actually meet people, I mean, we host a meetup now every month. And we actually try to bring people into the room just so they can communicate with each other and share the knowledge. And the one thing that I learned when I got into real estate investing rather quickly is everybody's willing to help. You just have to put yourself out there and ask for it.
Well, a lot of people think you're competition, but the real truth is not everybody's doing the same thing. So I don't care if you had 5 deals in your backyard, you're not really competing with everybody because everybody's doing something different. So at a
Same
I
time,
thing.
thought everybody was competition when I got started. I was like, no, I ain't telling nobody
Yeah.
about this stuff. And
Yeah.
but I was on my own for so long because of that way of thinking. And when people said, no, you got to go out and meet these people, I'm like, no, I don't. No, this is all mine, type of attitude. And I think later on, you start to realize how important those relationships, because, when you have, a meetup club or a real estate club, those are usually people from an insurance agency or an attorney, whoever it may be. They're more investor knowledgeable. They understand more of what's going on from the investor side versus just the typical baby home inspector that typically works for somebody buying a home, not necessarily an investor. And I think that's really important. And really appreciate your time. And please hang out with us, Bobby, because I know we have more questions
Yeah.
to get through, but really appreciate your time explaining some of those tips. And hopefully that's gonna benefit people. So